WJCT News Team.
Greater Jack's facing a public health crisis. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, leading pediatricians in Duval County are holding an emergency webinar calling for mask mandates in the Duval County public schools. This despite Governor DeSantis' order forbidding that. We'll take a closer look. Then later.
Elevate Jacksonville is a unique program that deliberately and intentionally hires teachers, and they teach a very unique curriculum based on 13 character qualities and life skills.
The work of Elevate Jacksonville at Rains and Ribault High Schools. That and more is all ahead. After the day's news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Giles Snyder. The Senate could start debating amendments today to that bipartisan infrastructure bill that's a key part of President Biden's economic agenda. NPR's Jen Newman reports that the Senate released the details of the text last night.
The infrastructure bill totals more than 2,700 pages and includes funding for roads, bridges, transit systems, water services, and high-speed internet access. After lengthy negotiations during a rare weekend session, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the bill should now move through the chamber quickly.
Given how bipartisan the bill is and how much work has already been put in to get the details right, I believe the Senate can quickly process relevant amendments and pass this bill in a matter of days.
The bill includes $550 billion in new spending over 5 years, on top of $550 billion in previously approved funds. Jen Newman, NPR News.
Moving on now to NPR's Rob Stein reporting on the nation's fourth coronavirus surge. It's continuing to accelerate, with infections, hospitalizations, and deaths all still rising.
More than 100,000 new infections were reported nationally in a single day Friday, according to the CDC. That's the first time that's happened in nearly 6 months. The worst is still concentrated in central states such as Missouri and southern states such as Florida, but hotspots are burning from Massachusetts to California. The surge is prompting a flurry of new mask mandates and even some vaccine mandates by private companies, including Facebook, Google, Disney, and Walmart. Vaccinations are finally rising again in at least a dozen states, especially some of the hardest hit with the lowest vaccination rates. Rob Stein, NPR News.
To Tokyo, where International Olympic Committee spokesman Mark Adams says the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees is in contact with Belarusian sprinter Kristina Simonskaya.
In this particular issue, with this particular athlete, the most important thing at the moment is our duty of care to her, which is why we spoke to her yesterday. We continue to be in touch with her today.
Simonskaya alleges that her team's officials tried to force her to fly home, where she fears for her safety amid a year-long crackdown against opponents of Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. The situation led to a standoff at Tokyo's main airport. She has since received a humanitarian visa from Poland. Gymnast Simone Biles is returning to the competition in Tokyo. She is to participate in tomorrow's balance beam final after dropping out of gymnastic events, citing a mental block that left her disoriented. That announcement came as her teammate Jade Carey claimed the gold medal in the floor exercise today. Meanwhile, the women's soccer team missing a chance to play for the gold. The U.S. team lost to Canada in the semifinals. This is NPR News.
It's now 9:04. This is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Michelle Coram. Secretary of Veterans Affairs Dennis McDonough visited health workers at Florida VA hospitals in Tampa and Miami last week as the VA became the first federal agency to mandate COVID-19 vaccinations for staff. Health News Florida's Stephanie Colombini talked with McDonough about the decision.
Patient-facing staff like doctors and nurses have until mid-September to get COVID shots or face losing their jobs. McDonough says vets who use the VA typically have underlying health conditions, and with the Delta variant spreading rapidly, he can't take any chances.
Especially in a state like Florida, with more than 1.5 million veterans, the third highest veteran population by state in the union, The most important thing any of us can do to protect those heroes is to get vaccinated.
McDonough's looking into legal possibilities for requiring more staff to get inoculated. He's also mandating people wear masks in VA buildings, regardless of their vaccination status, in areas where there's high transmission of COVID, which includes Florida. For Health News Florida, I'm Stephanie Colombini.
And Jacksonville City Councilwoman Jacoby Pittman is out of the hospital. Pittman spent more than 3 weeks in the hospital being treated for COVID-19, some of that time in intensive care. Warm and humid and 77 degrees in Jacksonville. A 60 to 70% chance of rain today after 3. Low 90s this afternoon, mid-70s tonight.
Support for NPR comes from iDrive, providing cloud backup, full system backup, and on-site iDrive appliance to protect PCs, Macs, and servers from data loss due to crashes and ransomware at iDrive.com/NPR and Americans for the Arts.
With record case counts and hospitalizations, Florida is the new epicenter of the latest COVID wave. Good Monday morning. We're live once again from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead this Monday, the latest on the surge in COVID cases across Greater Jacksonville, our crammed ICUs, and what it all means for kids who are soon headed back to school. We want your calls. Join us, 549-2937. Then later, speaking of school, how City Year Jacks is preparing to go back into classrooms in the middle of all this. But first this hour, the latest numbers on the pandemic, according to federal data. Florida broke a previous record yesterday for current hospitalizations from COVID-19, 10,207 people. And that happened just one day after the state recorded the most new daily COVID cases since the start of the pandemic. In the state's weekly report, which came out Friday, new cases jumped from about 73,000 to 110,000 and change, a big, big spike. And here in Duval County, the Department of Health recorded a record high 8,308 new cases. That's a rise of nearly 2,000 from the previous week. Deaths increased as well, although there is a lag in reporting times. The department recorded an increase of 409 deaths statewide over the past week, compared to 172 deaths the week before. So these numbers give us all a picture, everybody. Cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are climbing sharply upward. And again, keep in mind, virtually everyone getting seriously ill and dying now is unvaccinated. Here's a little good news. As the numbers rise, vaccinations are ticking up. 50.6% of Duval County residents are now at least partially vaccinated. That's still well below the state average, though. 15,583 COVID jabs given out in Duval County from Friday's report. The week before, they only reported about 5,000. So more of you are getting vaccinated. Keep that up, please. Now, this is all happening as the governor signed an executive order last week banning school districts from implementing mandatory mask mandates, just a week before school resumes here in Duval County. Here's the thing, though. This Monday, teachers, parents, healthcare leaders are fighting back against that edict from Tallahassee. They're holding an emergency webinar tonight calling for Duval schools to institute masks for kids. Regardless of what the governor says, there will also be a protest Tuesday night and a rally outside the Duval County Public School offices before they hold their school board meeting. Right now, we're pleased to welcome Dr. Mobeen Rathore, co-chair of the Baptist Health System Infection Prevention and Control Committee. He's also chief of infectious diseases and immunology at Wolfson Children's Hospital. Dr. Rathore, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa.
Joining him, we welcome Dr. Jeffrey Goldhagen. He's professor and chief of Division of Community and Societal Pediatrics at UF College of Medicine, JAX, and president of the International Society for Social Pediatrics and Child Health. Dr. Goldhagen, Good morning to you.
Good morning, Melissa. I need to just make a quick statement that my statements and positions don't necessarily reflect those of the University College of Medicine. They're personal.
I appreciate that. And we are already getting calls as we speak to two of the leading pediatricians in this community and in this state. Give us a call, 549-2937. Emails to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Tweets to @MelissaInJax or weigh in on Facebook. All right. Let's begin with you, Dr. Rathore. As I mentioned, the governor has told school districts you cannot mandate masks for students. Superintendent Diana Green is going to mandate masks for all adults on school campus for the first 30 days of school, all teachers, staff, vendors, visitors. Is that enough in your view?
Well, I don't think so, Melissa. We need to do everything we can to protect our children. As you know, children less than 12 years old are not even eligible for vaccines. So we know that all of them are at risk. So I think, we place requirements to protect our children all the time. This is nothing new. We require children to sit in car seats or booster seats. We require children under 21 years of age to wear helmets while riding motorbikes. I mean, we require children to be vaccinated to attend public schools. So this is not a novel idea. And I think for society to place requirements to protect our children, and mask is just one of those many things we do to protect our children. And as a nation, we do not tolerate anything that could hurt our children. And why would we tolerate this? And we as people will be judged on how well we protect our children.
So this webinar you're holding tonight, we'll get into the details in a moment. You'll be calling for the Duval superintendent to mask kids up. Dr. Goldhagen, she's already said she would do that if it weren't for the governor's executive order. You're asking her to defy the governor, essentially, correct?
Well, we're asking her to represent and reflect the majority feeling of parents around the community. There are other school districts around the state that are in fact doing that. What we're doing really is asking the governor to respond to the feelings and the commitments of our parents to protect their kids. I think Mobeen, as an infectious disease expert, would reflect on the fact that this variant is a very different disease than we had before, and we need to understand that and respond to it. You mentioned the increase in hospitalizations and cases. We're seeing a dramatic increase in the number of children that are impacted, and a dramatic increase, upwards of 500% or so, of kids that are being hospitalized. So bringing kids into schools unmasked will, for the most part, undoubtedly result in a significant increase in the number of children who are infected, and the number of children who suffer significant mortality and maybe morbidity as well.
You expect, Dr. Rathore, do you expect pediatric deaths coming out of this decision in our community? How big of a concern is that for you and your colleagues?
Well, Melissa, we know that when coronavirus affects children, they can get very sick and they can also die. But I think let's not just focus on the worst of this, but even something else that the children may have to live for the rest of their life. We are learning more and more that once you get infected, you can have the long-term complications of COVID called COVID long. Not to mention that the MIS-C, the dreaded MIS-C, that can occur 4 to 6 weeks later. So yes, so some children unfortunately will die, but others, many, many more will have MIS-C, and a lot more will have these long-term complications. Now, Melissa, if I get a COVID, I may have to deal with it, if I'm lucky, for the next 20 years. If a 6-year-old gets it, he has to deal with it for the next 80 years. So I think we need to be very sure that we protect these children so they can not only not get sick right now or in 4 to 6 weeks, but for the rest of their life. Think about the polio. We got the vaccine, but before that, people who got polio infection, many years, decades later, in their 70s, 80s, they suffered post-polio syndrome. So their lives were not only miserably affected when they got polio, but it affected them for the rest of their lives.
It's 549-2937. Give us a call as doctors, teachers, parents, and activists plan to rally tonight and tomorrow to try to encourage Duval County Public Schools to essentially defy an order from the governor and call for a mask mandate for students in schools. Let us know your thoughts about that. 549-2937. Jeff Goldhagen, what about the governor's stance on this? He's saying the data doesn't show that mask wearing in schools significantly made a difference in terms of the transmission of the disease to children.
Well, that's absolutely false. There are a number of studies, in particular, a particularly good one that came out of North Carolina, that shows that, in fact, if children wear masks in school, the transmission is very significantly decreased from those schools that, in comparison to those schools that did not require masking and social distancing. So the data is overwhelmingly supportive of the fact that masks work and they work well. And with this new variant, this new Delta variant that we're experiencing, it's incredibly more important now that they be masked. I'd like to say two other things. Number one, in support of what Mobeen said, we're also getting information and data that children may in fact be neurologically impacted for long term. And so that's a critical issue. And then the other issue that, again, Mobeen as an infectious disease expert can comment on, we're dealing with the Delta variant. We know how viruses mutate. There is nothing inconsistent with expecting that there'll be another variant after the Delta variant unless we reach herd immunity, and that variant may in fact impact children more severely than the current one does. So this is not just about addressing today. It's also ensuring that, in fact, we can prevent further problems happening down the line.
549-2937. Lots of calls. Let's begin with Patrick. He's a teacher in Jacksonville. Hi, Patrick. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks so much for taking my call. I really just have a couple of comments. Last school year, I spent the entire year masked with plastic dividers on my tables, taking temperatures every morning of students to make sure that we were safe. And I was hoping to go back to school under somewhat normal circumstances this year. But when I heard that the governor decided that only adults, faculty, staff, whatever, in schools could be required to wear masks, but not students, I was just appalled. To be honest with you, that's like saying only people in blue cars have to obey stop signs, or only people over the age of 25 have to obey the speed limit. I mean, if you're going to have the rule, you got to have it for everybody. And I don't know if it's possible, but as far as I'm concerned, he needs to be held criminally responsible for anybody who gets sick and dies during the school year because of this absurd mandate. We know what's best for us here in Jacksonville. We're a hot spot. Put on a mask and get a shot. It isn't really that difficult to do. And that's basically what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, Patrick, thanks for that. Okay, so Dr. Rathore, we're hearing from lots of teachers, also via email and social media. We spoke with a teacher last week who called into the show and said, if the school board doesn't do the right thing tomorrow night and change course on this, she's quitting. Teachers are concerned about their health. They have been for a long time. But let me ask you, Dr. Rathore, about the other side of this. What's your message out there to parents who are very much in favor of what the governor is doing? They don't want their kids masked. They feel it should be their decision as parents.
Well, Melissa, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a parent. You are a parent. Jeff is a parent. I believe honestly that all parents want to do what's best for their children. But I have said in the beginning of the show, if a parent says, I'm not going to put my kid in the car seat, we won't tolerate that. If a parent says, we are not going to put a helmet on a child, they will be held responsible. So I think, so the other part of it is, if my car breaks down, taking the car analogy here further, I will take it to a mechanic. I will not bring it to Jeff or you. I want to take it to an expert. If my AC breaks down, I want an AC technician. So I think we need to listen to the overwhelming opinion of investigators, scientists who have spent their lifetime doing this, and they understand and know how to fight this infection as best as we can. This is also we need. I mean, I will be the first one to say we need to have humility to learn as things change. But however, masks, I think the vast majority of the scientific data is clear that masks do help in preventing infection. And as you said, the teacher is going to resign because if a child gets an infection and they give it to a teacher and we know they are going to have a much worse impact. So as Patrick said, if blue cars are supposed to stop at red lights and green cars are not, we're going to have lots of accidents.
Susan in Mandarin. Hello, Susan. You're on the air.
Thank you. My question is about Governor DeSantis's order. So the way I read it, he talks about parental rights, which I believe he's referring to HB 241, and that one says that parents can opt their kids out of certain public health things like sex ed and things like that. So it seems to me that the school board could pass a mask mandate, and then parents would have to actively request that their student be exempt from that rule. And the difference between that and making it optional, it would make the parents actually have to take an action to say, we want to ignore this public health rule, while the school board would be emphasizing that the best way to keep our neighborhood schools safe is for the mask mandate. Representative Randy Fine had posted some stuff on his Facebook page that indicated that he realizes that a mask mandate would be the safest way, or that's the way I interpreted what he posted. So why not?
Yeah, and I noticed that he also was giving parents tips on how to get their kids into private schools, which or voucher schools, which might have a mandate. I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah, so why not make the neighborhood schools the safest ones? And if somebody wants to go to a school that doesn't allow masks, then they get the voucher for that one. I mean, I'm not a proponent of vouchers. I would like for our the money to go to the neighborhood schools and make them the safest and the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Goldhagen, what about the point of view of parents like that one who feel that if a parent doesn't want to mask up their child, that they should have to be jumping through the hoops? The same way, that there are those parents out there who they object to vaccines more broadly, and they have to file a religious or some kind of other exemption with the state to send their kids to school without the full complement of vaccines.
Well, I agree 100% with what she's saying, except I would take it a step further. I would say that, in fact, the schools need to set the standard that, in fact, all children will be masked. If parents do not want their children masked, then they can homeschool. That's number one. Number two, it may be that, in fact, we may need to reintroduce virtual schools, options. And I would say if those two don't work, then let's segregate kids. Let's have masked room and maskless room. And if parents want to send their kids to school unmasked, then they can be segregated, so to speak, into maskless rooms, and we'll see how many teachers actually want to participate in those rooms. And I would take it a step further, very much take it a step further. The community now is moving toward vaccine mandates. The private sector has moved there, and I think it will be important to, in fact, mandate vaccines as soon as for in particular now for teachers, and as soon as there's the opportunity for children, in particular those younger kids, that we move to vaccine mandates.
What about, though, putting yourself in the shoes of school superintendents who are facing the loss of funding from the state if they defy this order from the governor? That's where the challenge before a superintendent like Dr. Diana Green.
If I can remark, these are political issues. The governor is using children as political pawns, and he's politicizing this. And any rational approach that doesn't include a political response, I don't think is going to be overly successful. So there are times when that demand courage and leadership. And in fact, if this is one of those times, and it's a time for, and I understand the situation of Dr. Green, but it's time for our community to say that there's been profound disrespect for children. Children have a right to optimal health and well-being, and we need to advance that right.
We should note we are hosting Dr. Diana Green on this show Wednesday morning, so everyone please listen for that conversation. Lots of calls. Let's go to Joe at the Beaches. Hi, Joe. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Melissa. I'm so glad to get through to you. I was driving and heard your show. Love your show.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, can I inject? I'm glad the politics came in because my comment would be this. Governor DeSantis is a conservative, and conservative beliefs really aren't about governing from the top down. They should be listening to the localities. So if Duval County really wanted a mask mandate, he should be honoring that, never mind removing funding from the school systems. That's my thought for the day, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you for that, Joe. Certainly there has been that criticism of not just on this issue, but many others where home rule isn't being honored by Tallahassee. Thank you for that. Lee, up on Amelia Island. Hi, Lee. Good morning. Go ahead.
Hi. Good morning. And my thought, talking about the political end of this, is DeSantis needs to suffer a recall. A real leader leads. He doesn't use it. He leads for the greater good of the whole. And DeSantis at this point is just doing what it takes for him to stay politically popular with the fringe elements.
I should tell you, Lee, that I should tell you that there is no recall mechanism in the state of Florida for the governor or most other officials. You might have seen that in California, there's an effort to recall that governor, Gavin Newsom. It's not the first time they've recalled a governor out there. There is no mechanism in our statutes to do that in Florida. So basically, if you like the way the governor is performing, you're going to vote for him next year. If you don't, you will vote for someone else. That is the only recall mechanism in Florida for this kind of situation.
Boy, oh boy. Well, as a Republican, I'm thinking of trying to find somebody to promote and stand up against everything DeSantis is doing regarding children and masking.
Thank you, Lee. Dr. Rathore, certainly we live in a polarized era and people are quite tribal about their political identities. That said, this is an issue that I think cuts across partisan lines because certainly parents of all backgrounds want to protect their children and they are concerned about sending their kids into school right now in the middle of this variant. Can you give us a little more insight into where you see this headed in terms of pediatric deaths and long-term ramifications like the effects of long COVID? It's my understanding there were nearly 24 local children at last count in local ICUs with COVID-19. And do you expect that number to climb?
So, Melissa, I think talking about politics, I'm very political. My politics is kids, and I vote kids. So I think I just want to be clear where my political party is. I think it's important that your listeners know that we have seen more kids admitted to the hospital in this fourth surge than ever before in this pandemic. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think we all know now that kids often don't get very ill. While we are all focused on, and rightly so, the kids who are in the ICUs, kids who are going to die, we need to remember, politicians are looking at the next election. We need to be looking for our children for their life. As I said, for the next 80 years. And you know that, Melissa, we have some common acquaintances whose children have this long-term complications of COVID. And, we don't even know how to deal with them. I think I really want people to think that, yes, your child may get the infection and they may not get very ill, But what's going to happen next year, in 5 years, you should be really concerned about that. We want our children to have the best, most productive lives. We want them to go to college and do the best things. But if they are not going to be able to even think clearly because of this brain fog that is caused by COVID-19, what are we setting our children up for? We are setting our children up for failure. So I do expect the number of cases to go up in children if we don't have masking in the school and the schools open. I do expect infections to go up if the children 12 and older currently are not immunized. I would beg parents, if I have to please immunize your children. This is not about politics. This is about our children's well-being and their lives. Let's focus on our children and forget everything else. You're Republican, you're whatever you are.
Sure. Here's a tweet from a listener. Cindy asks, the government may have tied the district's hands on masks, but there's no reason we can't have inexpensive portable HEPA filters in Duval County Public Schools classrooms and lunchrooms. They are doing that in NYC schools this fall. Can the medical community advocate for that? So, Dr. Goldhagen, what about other ways, given that superintendents are unlikely to go against the governor on this order since they're concerned about losing funding for their districts? Are there other ways like that that might help mitigate this situation?
Absolutely. There's not one panacea for sure except vaccination. And let me reiterate what Mobeen said: we need to be immunizing our children. But any other interventions don't substitute for masking. And I would also recommend that parents really look at where they're taking their children into unmasked environments, whether it's the supermarkets or restaurants or wherever. Parents should not be taking their children into any environments and where people are not all masked. So this goes beyond the schools for sure. And again, let me iterate what Mobeen said: the long-term impact of this disease is unclear at this point in time, and parents will do anything to protect their children. Why not ensure that all the kids are masked and that they keep their kids out of environments that are potentially toxic for their kids?
Leslie in Jacksonville. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Hi. I'm well. I'm nervous, but well, thank you.
Yeah.
My position is that of a parent who 15 years ago, 16 years ago, had a child with a minor viral illness, and she has never recovered. And I want to stress the pain and the anguish, the disappointment, all those things that come along with having a young person struck down in early life. That's it. Thank you. Everyone should protect their children.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Leslie. Dr. Mobeen Rathore, as you mentioned, we do have folks we know in this community, including a coworker and friend of mine here at WJCT, whose kids are suffering from the effects of what is now called long haul COVID. And these effects, these health impacts are long lasting and serious, and we are still learning about them. And so as parents look at the numbers and say, well, my child is far less likely to die than an adult from COVID-19, that is certainly true. But that does not mean children can't get seriously ill, and it doesn't mean that they can't have long-lasting health impacts, because we have seen this with our own eyes.
Yeah, and first of all, so sorry for your callers down. This is something that we really need to keep our focus on. As you said, Melissa, yes, they may not get very ill. And by the way, I would like to start calling it long-term complications. That seems correct. When you say long-haul COVID, people don't seem to pay much attention to that. Mm-hmm. But I think these complications, we don't even know many of them. We do know that there's some brain fog, they have aches and pains, they can go to school, adults can go to work. So I think I'm struggling with the fact that if the parents know this, and they will, when we send our kids to school, we drive them there, we watch where they're going, we make sure they are fire retardant clothing, we make sure they're watching the right social media. I mean, we do all these things, but such a simple thing, wearing masks. Now, one of your callers said about HEPA filters. Masks are probably more effective. By the way, masking is not the only thing. It is in addition to the continuation of testing protocols, social distancing. These are all things we have to do to mitigate infection. Now, if you want to put HEPA filters, I'm all for that. It's a very expensive solution as opposed to a very safe solution that children 2 years and older can easily wear masks.
In particular, because these other measures they're not going to be doing for the most part in schools. Distance learning, temp checks, social distancing, plexiglass barriers, that's all going away this term.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the Florida chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, in its statement that it sent out, wanted all of these things to continue, smart testing, all of these other mitigating interventions must continue. And by the way, just keep in mind, it's not, it's not just to protect the children. It's also to protect staff and also to protect the faculty. In Jacksonville, we now know that more than 98% of the infections are occurring in the unvaccinated. We also know that almost 99% of the small numbers we tested are Delta variant. And there's now information coming out, as you know, that even the vaccinated people, even though if they may not get as sick, as we all know about that, they are still able to transmit it. So even if you are vaccinated, you may still need masks in those situations. And in fact, I am telling you, I'm going back. I'm starting to wear masks again, although I'm fully vaccinated. My family is fully vaccinated. I'm going back to start to wearing masks now outside and in areas in the stores and everywhere. That's what I'm doing.
Sure, and that's common sense, honestly, given that the Delta variant is incredibly contagious and it is ripping through this community. Virtually everyone in local ICUs now is unvaccinated. So in addition to masking up, please get vaccinated if you haven't already done so. Now, Tuesday night, the Duval Schools Pandemic Solutions team and Duval for a Safe Return to Campus will be holding a rally at 5 o'clock outside the Duval County Public School Board building on the South Bank. The school board is meeting Tuesday night, so they will be hearing from the community about their desire to have Duval schools require a mask mandate for students as well as adults. But Dr. Goldhagen, that's coming up Tuesday night. Tonight, you are part of an emergency town hall virtual meeting, which includes a number of players. It's called Stand Up for All Children, Why We Need a Mask Mandate in Our Schools, and a discussion of the long-term effects of COVID on children. Tell us more about this webinar tonight.
Well, Mobine's also involved.
Right.
This is a grassroots community organization that's been working to overturn this mask mandate and to ensure that, in fact, the schools are safe places for their children, but in particular for all children. So the meeting tonight will be part of a movement that includes the meeting tomorrow evening in front of the school board. And it's I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, I'm a pediatrician, I'm a public health professional, and sometimes the only solution is a political solution, and parents need to weigh in on this, including the decisions not to send their kids to schools if in fact there are no mask mandates. This is, as Mobine has said, and you've said, this is an issue of life and death for their children, and morbidity that might in fact last a lifetime. And so why would a parent choose to send their children into environments that they know could potentially hurt them or kill them in the long term? And it's a political issue at this point in time. And again, the school board and Superintendent Green are in a very untenable position, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they're responsible for the safety of children. And by not including a mask mandate for children, and remember, the mask mandate for teachers is only for 30 days, they are in fact placing children at significant risk And no parent understanding that would rationally send their child into an environment that they know could potentially kill them. And that's the black and white situation that we're in right now. And the community needs to stand up to this irrational and political position of Governor DeSantis.
I want to thank you both, as always, for sharing your insights about pediatric health. Dr. Mobeen Rathore and Dr. Jeff Goldhagen, who will be part of tonight's webinar, along with a slew of others. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Much more still ahead. Later in the hour, how a local artist is using his work to spread some cheer in a tough time. But up next, City of Jacksonville is getting ready to go back to school, too, in the midst of this pandemic. We'll be right back. City Year Jacksonville is the local chapter of the AmeriCorps program City Year, and they work to address the lack of access to educational opportunities in Duval County. City Year Jax is going back into the classroom this month, working to help underrepresented communities, and they'll be doing it in the midst of a pandemic, as we've been talking about this morning. Alicia Bauman is Executive Director of City Year Jax, and she's on the line. Alicia, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good to talk to you. You're sending dozens of AmeriCorps members into the Duval County schools, and this is certainly a challenging time to be gearing up for that this year. Tell us about your priorities for City Year in this tense time of pandemic and concerns about safety in the classroom.
Sure, absolutely. We have been in Jacksonville proudly serving for 8 years now. And so we've been sending upwards of 100 highly skilled AmeriCorps members to work with more than 2,100 students throughout DCPS throughout that time. And so every school year in the summer, in preparation for the school year ahead, we gear up in several ways, including training and supporting our cohort of members to serve in the schools. And similar to last year, we served in schools last year as a part of the pandemic. Part of our preparations for going back to school includes our role in partnering with DCPS to really prioritize the health and safety of everyone in the school buildings and the readiness to deliver our services in person or wherever we find ourselves, wherever the services that are needed. We have a value at City Year, students first, collaboration always. So we are always going to put the well-being of our students first and do that in deep collaboration with our partners.
Yeah. So what if schools have to go virtual again and we run into some roadblocks with this Delta variant?
Sure. Yeah. I'm having flashbacks to when the pandemic first started and we sort of had to, the district, everyone had to kind of jolt and make a plan. I have to say I'm incredibly grateful for what Dr. Green and district leadership did during that time and continue to do. We are prepared to support if it has to be virtual or in person. Last year, our members quickly, we supplied devices to our AmeriCorps members, and we worked with the district to partner in virtual instruction alongside our partner teachers. So just as we would be working inside the classroom, we would be doing, various virtual supports with whatever the teacher needs. It will be dependent upon the school and the teacher and what their greatest need is. But that's sort of how we've been going into our meetings with schools and saying, look, we know things might look a little bit different. We want to be able to plug in that deep collaboration wherever the greatest need is for you. So if that ends up being virtual, we are absolutely prepared logistically, instructionally. We've actually been, as we speak, our AmeriCorps members are going through training, and it's been done hybrid. So we've had a couple of days in person, but we've done some days virtually as well in preparation for whatever kind of swings our way.
Sure. You're still recruiting for City Year. How tough is that right now, given what we're dealing with? What's your message to those that might be interested, but they're concerned about being in a classroom full of unmasked kids all day?
Sure, absolutely, totally. It's, this work, whether in a pandemic or not, is tough work. We are working towards educational equity for students in our community, and it is a commitment and giving of yourselves, again, whether it's in a pandemic or not. What I want everyone to know is that we prioritize the health and safety of all of our members, all of our staff members. We are requiring our folks actually to wear masks to ensure their safety and that of their partner teachers and students. And so we, the message that we always give is we're encouraging folks to care for themselves. And it is, you are giving of yourselves to go into a school in this way as our teachers and administrators in our schools. And we want to do that alongside them. We have, Melissa, as you probably know, City Year is a program that goes into schools. Our young people are serving in schools, but being a part of our program as a young person also allows you to develop professionally. And so we have a program model that we have various trainings and opportunities outside of the classroom that helps you gear up for whatever the thing is that you're wanting to do after City Year. And usually we do that fully in person, but this year we're actually really leaning into a hybrid model. So we're trying to cut down on any in-person things that are happening outside of the school building. Of course, if our teachers and our district is showing up, we are showing up as well. Outside of that, our program is happening hybrid. So we try to minimize the risk as much as possible, and we have other supports and accommodations for folks as well. But if you are listening or you know someone who's 18 to 25 years old, our students need you. They need you. This last year was a tough year. And, we're just trying to provide caring young people alongside our teachers to support them in the transition back.
Yeah, the transition back. And it should be a challenging one. But people can learn more at your website, cityyear.org/Jacksonville, if they're interested in finding out more about joining this AmeriCorps program, right?
Yes, absolutely. All the information is on our website, and we have folks available to chat one-on-one if anyone is interested.
Check it out, everyone. City Year and a new executive director, Alicia Bauman. Thank you, Alicia, so much, and be safe, and best wishes in the new school year.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
It's a serious time, but in a moment, one Atlantic Beach-based artist is working to spread some cheer right now. That's next.
Ascension St. Vincent's. CARE is listening and delivering personalized plans from a team of specialists dedicated to providing the latest technology and treatment at every step. Information and appointments at getjaxhealthcare.com. Congaree and Penn Landscape Trees, Jacksonville's family-owned large tree installation, relocation, and comprehensive landscape installer. More info and appointments available at congareetrees.com or 527-1945.
A canopy of 300-year-old oak trees in the U.S. Residential Historic District of Rockledge is in danger of being cut down. I'm Ben Brotmarkle, and coming up on Florida Frontiers, the weekly radio magazine of the Florida Historical Society, we'll talk with Michelle Marisick of the Rockledge Drive Tree Coalition. We'll discuss the Hastings Public Library and Game Warden Guy Bradley. That's Florida Frontiers, Monday evening at 6:30 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, playwright Katori Hall. She won the Pulitzer Prize this year for her play The Hot Wing King, which explores family, sexuality, and black masculinity. She's also the producer and writer of the Broadway show Tina, the Tina Turner musical. Her previous play, The Mountaintop, imagined the last night of the life of Martin Luther King Jr. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Daniel called us from Detroit.
I have not been vaccinated, and I am afraid of the side effects and the long-term effects of the vaccine.
Families and health professionals are pleading with those who haven't had their shot in the wake of a COVID variant that's ravaging the unvaccinated. How do you win over those who are still hesitant? That's next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Atlantic Beach artist Scotty Cousin has stayed busy during the pandemic, and one of the ways he's done that is by using his art to spread some cheer and happiness around town. Guerrilla Art. Scotty Cousin, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning to you, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So what have you been up to?
I've been in a lot of trouble.
Okay. Why is that?
No, really, seriously. I just have so much fun with all of this. Trying to, give people something else to think about and to have a creative reset of their day, month, year, whatever, with all that's going on. And it's just, it's been such a great thing, response that I've gotten from so many people. And every day it seems like I get a text of, hey, we just need to see that. And it's just really been, it's just so great. And I've taken a great responsibility to try to put more smiles on people's face right now, because we are just bombarded with the seriousness of life.
Sure.
And,
but what exactly are you doing? Can you tell us what kind of art you're creating and where you're placing it around town so we can see it?
Yes. I recycled these plastic signs that were during the presidential race and all the local government race, these signs that people put out in front of their houses. And I love recycling. And it came to me one day when I went to Publix or somewhere and just saw a lot of people, really hurting. And I said, I got to do something with this. And I have to reach people and just kind of give them a smile. And started putting them on trees. And just on the side of the road, you'll see a chameleon going up a tree. There's some on Atlantic Boulevard. There's in my town, Atlantic Beach. The city has given me approval to put a lot of stuff on Mayport and the Atlantic Boulevard. It's in Jack's Beach over there off of First Street, on Beach Avenue over there by Donato's Pizza, and near Atlantic Beach Arts Market, which is on Mayport. But it's really all over. You just never know where I'm going to pop up.
The element of surprise. And
randomness.
The randomness. I love it. You're doing some giveaways too. Tell us about that.
Yes, people have reached out to me through the various Facebook groups that I belong to, and people with dementia and cancer, and they needed just a little uplift. And I'll go over there and I'll just set up their whole house, or they'll come get some of my art and just put these little figurines all over the place, and it seems to cheer up the people that are really hurting and are going through cancer, dementia, and just countless other people have wanted to do things for their family and have reached out to brighten their day, and I just love that, and I would do that 24/7 if I could, but I kind of worked myself to death already. It's just really, really great to know that it affects them, to just put a smile on their face, because it's really the day will do that to you if you let it get to you.
We can all use more smiles, and art is powerful, and art is healing. So
it is. It's a great segue.
Yeah. So how can people find you and purchase your artwork?
Well, most of my creations are at the Atlantic Beach Arts Market, which is 1805 Mayport Road, Atlantic Beach. But I do have a small studio that I work out of in Atlantic Beach. But they can find me through Facebook, which is Scotty Cousin, SCOTIECOUSIN, or on Instagram, same spelling. And that is really the way that I really kind of do things, just through the gallery at Atlantic Beach.
And if they're driving around the beaches and they see a random funky piece of artwork in an odd place, they now know who did it, right?
I know. I just hope it just gives them a creative reset, and I hope, that creative uppercut, they go, wow, what the heck was that, I just see.
Yes, we need that serendipity in our lives. I think it's great. So, Scotty Cousin, thanks for brightening up the beaches with your talents, and thanks for being with us.
It's such an honor. Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.
And check him out at the Atlantic Beach Arts Market, and follow Scotty Cousin, 1T, on Instagram. And that's our show. Thanks for listening. Thanks also to all of our guests and callers, and the people who tweet the show, along with producer Heather Schatz, director Josh Torres, and our new associate producer Catherine Hobbs. Also rounding out the team here, editorial director Jessica Palumbo and digital editor Bill Bortsfield. Keep your feedback coming. We appreciate it. Emails go to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. And if you missed any part of today's show, catch our podcast. It's posted later today on all platforms, including the WJCT app. I'm Melissa Ross. This is First Coast Connect on WJCT News, 89.9 Jacksonville. We'll be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. In the meantime, mask up and get the vaccine.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.